Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's that time of week again. Everybody's favorite segment, the power rankings. Before we jump into it, I just want to kind of go over what's just going on. The bases were loaded for Atlanta Braves, Arizona. I was waiting to see that game end before I did the video. As you guys know, I always film this right before the Sunday nighter with the Yankees and Dodgers on deck tonight. Series tied 1-1. It's going to be an exciting Sunday night. We also have a somewhat late game in the Chicago Cubs and Padres playing. It looks like the Cubs have a pretty big lead, so I'm going to kind of assume that they're winning that. But other than that, we're going to jump right into it. I think as soon as I put on this Diamondbacks hat, I must have cursed them or something. I've been holding them back all season long. We're going to talk about it in this power ranking segment. Of course, as we talk about all the other teams, bottom row, pretty much the teams that are out of it. Kicking things off, we have the Oakland A's. 2-1 against Atlanta, 0-3 against the Marlins. And guys, they win a series this week, but it's not going to change the path that this A's team is on. They're destined to be number 30 all season long. I don't know what it would take. It would take a complete disaster from these teams ahead of them, as well as them to play like 500 baseball in September and August. I don't see that happening, so they're going to be pretty much there. 29, we got the Royals, 1-1 against St. Louis, 1-2 against Colorado. Playing two teams this week that are more near the bottom. They managed to steal a pretty big win against the Cardinals early in the week when they lit up Adam Wainwright, but that was pretty much the highlight of the week. Falling to the lowly Colorado Rockies in the other series. Dropping a couple of spots, we got the Washington Nationals, 1-2 against the Dodgers, 1-2 against Philly. They don't tend to get swept too much. A lot of bad news coming out this week, too, with Strasburg probably potentially being done for his career. It looks like the team that took them to the World Series is pretty much non-existent there now. So it's a complete rebuild, but of course, we all know they gave up all that capital. I think we could see them in the bottom of this division for the next number of years. Washington has a long path ahead of them, whereas we have all these other teams in their division. They're either buying better teams, they are better teams, or they're kind of rebuilding a little bit better. So they're in a tough spot. Number 27, we got the Colorado Rockies, 0-4 against the Diamondbacks, and that pretty much sealed their fate to be in this bottom four. Worst in the west side of the National League, and I don't think the Rockies are getting out of there. We've kind of talked about it for a couple of years. This Rockies team has been expected to be somewhat bad. Got a little bit of hope for them last year. When they got Chris Bryant coming in, I thought some offense was going to go on, and they had a couple pitchers that looked like they were coming together, but it's not worked out for the Rockies. Doesn't ever seem to really work out for them too often. Like to see where they're going to end up. Number 26, moving on to the National League Central, we got Cincinnati, 2-1 against Boston. So they had a pretty good series against the top team in this power rankings, a team that's played pretty well all season, Boston, early in the week. But then they play a series against the Brewers over the weekend. They get absolutely obliterated, swept. And that's really I'm looking for Cincinnati. If they're going to take some steps forward, they got to win these series in their division. They just don't seem to do that year after year right now. Of course, they win series here and there. They take wins here and there, but a big sweep against a team that's probably the best in the division. If we wanted to see Cincinnati in that playoff conversation, and I've mentioned them here and there, it didn't happen this week, and I'm kind of starting to count them out. Number 25, contrary to popular belief, 1-2 against San Diego, sweep in Oakland. We have the Miami Marlins. Now, took a lot of heat for this team having them really low, and I understand where that's coming from. I still don't necessarily think when we start matching them up against the teams that I do get ahead, they're going to win more than they lose. Sure, they're 500, above 500 right now. Their run differentials are pretty bad. If you look at their analytics, expected wins, they're about 10 wins above where they are expected to be based on everything else. So like errors working in their favor, variance has been heavily in their favor. Most lucky team so far in the MLB, and they're only 500. So that's concerning for me. And when we start extrapolating this team over the next 50, 60 games, I really expect them to come down to earth. Their path to move up this is to keep winning. There's no question about it. If they keep winning another month, I can't argue it anymore. We'll see them in the middle of the league. And then if they win after that, I expect if they ever had a shot at the playoffs, they'd sneak in there in the wild card, which would kind of make their peak here at best, and that would not happen until September. So this team, they have a long way to prove to me that they're power ranking. I don't care about the record. I don't care that they're winning. They're just not gonna. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna be consistent. I don't see the pieces of the puzzle there, so that's why I have them low. But I'm not afraid to admit I'll be wrong if we get to that point. Number 24, 1-1 against Kansas City. They get swept by the Pirates, so I think that was the nail in the coffin for the Cardinals. I was starting to believe that as bad as they had in April and May, they started to chip away and be back in the conversation of a division lead. Took a big hit this week against the Pirates, and they have 4 teams ahead of them to skip over. I think they're starting to run out of runway. Of course, anything can go in that division, but that's kind of where I have them. Next up, we got the White Sox 1-2 against the Angels. And then they had a big series win, 3-0 against Detroit. They lost to the series against Detroit last week, so didn't necessarily jump them over Detroit. The rest of their season's been pretty bad, so I'm still going to weigh that in a little bit. But the White Sox are starting to win a little bit here and there, right? So given that this division's up for grabs, we know one team absolutely is going to be the only team coming out of this division. They're not out of it. We're going to start rattling off a couple of these guys. The Guardians, 22, 2-1 against Baltimore, 2-2 against Minnesota. So pretty big week for them, really. Beating the Orioles, a team that was in the top row. And then they split a series against the division lead, so they keep that gap the same. They lost the first 2 games of that series, so it could have very much been a disaster, and they managed to salvage with 2 big wins in the next 2 games. Guardians they're in there, going to be the same conversation with these Central teams. Next up, Detroit, 1-2 against Texas, 0-3 against the White Sox. So this is like the first stumbly week that the Tigers have really had, especially playing against teams that aren't the American League East. Do think they are the better team, but you could interchange any of these guys. Honestly, Detroit could be here, White Sox here. It could be interchangeable. The real gist of the story here is that it's like a chunk of teams that are all the same. That's probably what we're getting at. A little bit ahead, maybe we got the New York Mets, who started the week off strong, but then fell apart over the weekend. So they got swept by the Blue Jays, and then they swept the Phillies early in the week. So they win a key series against a team in their division, team that they've been hunting. I don't necessarily know if I'm going to move them up past the Phillies anytime soon. Big sweep, of course, but the offense has me really concerned, this Mets team. 500 week, that's pretty much where they've been floating around for the last little while. Number 19. We got the Chicago Cubs, 2-1 against Tampa, 2-1 against San Diego. So a good week against 2 teams that I have better than them on the board, as we haven't talked about them yet. Team has shown that the pitching and the defense is what's winning games. They've had a lot of 1-run win games, a lot of low-scoring games where they're pulling out the win, and they're winning series along the way in a division that's up for grabs. So this Cubs team's starting to inch back up. They've been probably one of the most roller coaster teams. A pretty big momentum team early in the week or early in the season, fallen pretty low, I think, and then they're starting to bounce back. So I think that the sky is the limit for this Chicago Cubs team. Next up, we got the Phillies, 0-3 against the Mets, 2-1 against Washington. So they were setting up for a disastrous week after losing that sweep to the Mets and then dropping that game against Washington. They did bounce back. The offense really starting to pop. That's kind of why I still have them edged above the Mets, as I think their offense just has a big edge. And when these 2 teams face, I think it should make the difference in a heavy weighted match where we're seeing the best pitchers of both teams. They match up pretty equally, I think. But the Phillies, record-wise, pretty bad. It's been a rough start. Really starting to lose faith in them. I think this is one of the biggest drops I've had of them all season. Faith is starting to wane. Bullpen's very scary. It's always a trend with Philly, but yeah, they got to start bouncing back, or else we're going to see them drop even more. Number 17, we got the Angels, 2-1 against the White Sox. And then a bad series against Houston Astros, 1-3. Ohtani loses the match with Valdez. The Angels managed, I think, to sneak the win today, I think it was that they won. But a rough series, and that's one they really wanted to get up and play for, because this division is tough. The top 4 teams in this division, We're always going to discount the AAA Oakland A's, but this division's tough, and this has Angels in fourth in my books. Not too far, but this team has a slight edge. 1-2 against the Yankees, 0-3 against Texas. So do they really have much of an edge over the Angels? Maybe not, but I think they match up a little bit better. They've had a little bit of a stronger past couple of weeks. Discounting this week, going up against two of the top teams in the MLB, with the Rangers and the Yankees. Can't hold too much against them. Those other two teams seem to be powerhouses right now, so I won't. 15, San Fran, 1-2 against Pittsburgh, 1-2 against Baltimore. So I think this is a team that had a losing week that went up on the board, I'm pretty sure. Might be, that doesn't happen too often, but I've liked what I've seen but against San Fran. They played very competitive against the O's, even though their offense got pretty shut down in a couple of those games. They're competitive, and this team remains to be competitive across the board, and they've kind of sneakily gotten pretty solid, and I like their chances, and I like how they match up better than any team we've talked about so far. And even though they had a losing week, my confidence in them is growing slightly. Still have them outside the playoffs at number 15, but it's not outside the question because they're going to have to hop this team. 14, 2-1 against Miami, 2-1 against the Cubs. So this is another team on top of the Marlins that take heat for. Of course, Padres have had an atrocious season so far. I'm going to say it. Don't think they're as bad as their record. Still managed to pick up wins, and this week was a prime example, winning both series against teams that have ranked lower than them. So as long as they keep doing that, I think I might have even dropped them. When I get to the comments, sometimes, as you guys know, we're talking about 30 teams. There's 15 games a day most days. Can't watch every inning, can't watch every pitch. So I do listen to what you guys say in the comments, and San Diego is one of those prime ones. I was like, okay, these guys might be onto something. So I started digging deeper, started looking at depth charts, started looking at injuries, started looking at numbers. And I started to understand where you guys were coming from more than I was giving credit to in the past, but I still think they're a 14th ranked team. Number 13, we have the Pittsburgh Pirates. 2-1 against San Fran, 3-0 against St. Louis. Just an awesome week for the Pirates. A lot of confidence in them after they've had kind of a rough couple of weeks. Ever since that massive April, everyone was pumped up about them in April. People were ranking them in the top row of their power rankings. I never quite got on board with that, but the Pirates are still, I think this might be the highest ever the Pirates have been on the power rankings board, and they deserve it. This was a solid week for them, picking up some solid wins against some solid opponents, especially kicking the Cardinals while they were low, which I know Pirates fans would have loved. Number 12, we have the Twins. 2-1 against Houston, 2-2 against Cleveland. So a pretty good week. Not the week they wanted to end it on, not how they wanted to end it. Talk about it already. They had 2-0 on Cleveland and then dropped two of the next ones there. So could have continued to do it. And it's been the theme of this story this season for the Twins. They're not building the gap the way I felt they should, or they could have early in this year. I feel like this division should be a 7-8 game difference right now, and it's not. Still expect them to win, but the growing concern is luckily it's still a big spread, a lot of teams in the middle, but the Twins, they gotta win when it counts. 11. We got the Boston Bruins, 1-2 against Cincy, 1-2 against Tampa. I called them the Bruins. I got hockey on the brain, was watching Stanley Cup last night. But the Red Sox, of course, not a good week. Lost both series. They're dropped down to 500, and 500 is going to put you square in last place in the American League East. If you're in last place, you're not making the playoffs. It's kind of expected at this point. It's still a strong team, top 11, but Boston is starting to trend down as the rest of the division continues to win, and Boston isn't picking up wins against series like Cincinnati. That's not good. Next up, Milwaukee. What a week for Milwaukee. So they started off not great. They stole a win against the Toronto Blue Jays. So they went 1-2 against the Jays, and then they swept over the weekend, which we already talked about. So a nice 4-2 week. So Milwaukee continues to be on top of the Central Division. Pirates, as you can see, closing that gap. They're going to be playing each other, and they got quite a few games against each other still. So that'll be a big difference maker. Not too much else to say. Milwaukee. Talked about it last week, actually. They don't get swept, and that's kind of a big thing, and they showed it against the Blue Jays. Their pitching really tends to get one win for them all the time. Number 9, moving up a couple of spots. 4-0 against Colorado, and then they just blew the game here against Atlanta, so they dropped to 1-2 against Atlanta. Had them as high as 7th based on how that game was going, but the way that one ended kind of dropped them a couple of spots. But Arizona, I'm giving them more credit. I know you guys, I forget the name of you, but one of you have been calling me out from them since like the second week, saying I have them too low. Move them up slowly. Starting to believe this rotation has a lot better depth performance than I gave them credit for up until now, really digging deep into it. And they have some young guys, and Lourdes Gurriel's working out for them. The young guys are working. They're working. I'm still questionable if they can make it last, but at this point, I really think they have a wild card spot in their grasp, and they are matching up against the rest of the teams that are below them quite well. So I'm going to start giving them the credit to be a top 10 team. Number 8, we have the Atlanta Braves. So they went 1-2 against Oakland, so that was a lot of concern. And then they were on the verge of losing a series to Arizona here, which had me concerned even more. The injuries to their starting rotation has taken a hit for them, because that was always a big proponent for why they were so high, as their rotation was lethal 1 through 5. They're missing 2 guys with Kyle Wright and Max Fried both being out with shoulder issues. Atlanta, they're winning. They're on a path here that they should win the division. I would be shocked if they didn't at this point. But yeah, when it matches up against these other top teams, they're struggling right now, and that includes the Toronto Blue Jays, who they got swept by last week. And Toronto had a good week, 2-1 against the Brewers, and then they went and they swept the Mets. Like, just starting to show that this American League East team division has pretty much probably been the best ever division we've had since we've talked about the power rankings. We have the last place team in 11th and the 4th place team in 7th. I don't think we've ever had anything this close. There's usually at least one team from each division, the bottom row, if not the bottom 2 rows. So this is unprecedented times, but the East keeps rolling everyone outside of their division. It's pretty impressive. And that brings us to number 6. We got New York Yankees, 2-1 against Seattle, 1-1 against the Dodgers, and the Dodgers series has been great. Yankees have just steadily fought back into it. I think I dropped them as low as 14 or 15 when they were having some injury issues at the end of April, early May. They weren't winning, and they were kind of going under the radar because the rest of the East was so good, and they had lost some series to teams in the East. So there's some concern. They've righted the ship, and they're doing well. And whenever you're matching up against the Yankees, you got to watch out. Number 5, we have the Houston Astros. 1-2 against Minnesota, 3-1 against the Angels. They're steadily working their way back up in the second in that West, and they're starting to get healthy, and they got to be excited with that. Big series win against their division rival, the Angels. Not so happy, obviously, for losing one to Minnesota, but they're going to lose some. Everyone's going to lose some series along the way. And I still think with this team getting healthy, they're going to start closing that gap in that West. It's going to be a fun West down the stretch. Number 4, we got the Baltimore Orioles, 1-2 against Cleveland. And then they had a nice series win against San Fran. I was really happy for them to see them go out on the road, pick up a big series win. After losing that series to Cleveland, they haven't done that this season. The Orioles haven't had too many series where there's a series against a team that's much lower than them, like the Guardians are, where the Orioles lost. They were in a position to win that one, and they maybe let it slip away. But I like to see how they bounced back against San Fran. That was awesome to see. We'll see how it goes going forward. Of course, if they keep playing 500 baseball against the teams below them, it's not going to help them stay as high as this. We're in unprecedented territory again for this team. Not happening, but keep playing 600 baseball. You're going to be up here. Number 3, the LA Dodgers. 2-1 against Washington. 1-1 against the Yankees. Kind of a quiet week early in the week. Took care of business, beat the series. Sure, you want to see a sweep there, but you're not going to sweep everyone. Especially this is the MLB. Washington has shown that they don't like to get swept. Could see some changes here. Of course, these two teams play tonight. I would think that the Dodgers are still a little bit better if we look at a 5-game series where we get to see all the pitchers, all the batters consistently. But these two teams match up. Could go anyway. Honestly, the top 6 is probably interchangeable. Really, interchangeable. And I mean, some of these teams you could consider one. depending on what you look at in your arguments, you could probably interchange a lot of these teams. But number 2, 2-1 against Detroit, 3-0 against Seattle. Texas, of all the teams all season long, is making the best argument in the world to dethrone the team that's been number 1 all season long. Now, this could have been the week where I dethroned them. 1-2 against the Cubs, 2-1 against Boston, so like a 500 week. 500 doesn't keep you in first place. Of course, they had an amazing start. Maybe they're having some injuries right now. The bullpen's been a little shaky, blowing some leads, giving up some 5 spots. You could argue like maybe Texas is in first already. But when I was looking at it, getting ready for the video, I kind of noticed, hey, these 2 teams meet up next weekend. So why not let next weekend really settle it out? And if both of them have a terrible series in the first of the week, and then follow up with a split in the weekend, we could see another team hop them maybe, right? So I'm leaving it for one more week, Tampa. It's your title to defend, and they always say if you want to wear the belts, you have to defeat the champion. So Texas versus Tampa Bay, keep your eyes set on that. That's going to be an awesome one. But guys, thanks for watching. If you made it this far in the video, smash that like button for me. Subscribe to the channel if you don't already. Do this every week. I film it right when the Sunday Nighter starts and probably gets uploaded near the end of that game. So you can always have that notification bell on and you will be notified when it goes live. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace out.